You have data everywhere, but is it working together? Meet Curator, the automotive industry's first unified intelligence engine. Curator unifies data from all corners of your dealership to transform marketing, sales, and customer interactions. See it today at gibagoo.com.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Friday, August 29th, 2025. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, the EU begins the process to cut auto tariffs. Lana Payne is re-elected president of Unifor, and GM lays off hundreds of workers at its Detroit EV plant. Plus, our own John Hutter and Paige Hodder join the show to talk about the new retail finance and insurance special section in automotive news, including an effort by automakers to form an industrial loan company to help lower interest rates for their customers.
The FDIC has been kind of picky about approving applications over the past couple of years. They've approved 2 in the past 5 years.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. The European Commission says it would remove tariffs on U.S. industrial goods to cut U.S. duties on European cars. The Commission made the proposal on Thursday. It marks the EU's first step in enacting the framework agreement announced last month. Under that framework, the EU would accept a broad 15% tariff to avoid a damaging trade war. Unifor members have re-elected Lana Payne as their national president. The union said in a statement that she won the contest by a landslide at Unifor's Constitutional Convention in Vancouver this week. The union did not name the others in contention and didn't reveal how many delegates cast ballots or the percentage of votes she received. And General Motors is laying off about 360 employees at its electric vehicle plant in Detroit. That's according to a person familiar with the plan who spoke with us at Automotive News. The person says the layoffs will last for at least a month. One of 2 daily shifts building the GMC Hummer EV and the Cadillac Escalade IQ at Factory Zero will be idled from September 2nd until October 6th. The person says the cutback does not affect production of the Chevrolet Silverado EV and GMC Sierra EV full-size pickups, also built at Factory Zero. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. Now joining me to talk more about General Motors slowing production at Factory Zero in Detroit is Lindsay Van Hully, who covers GM for us at Automotive News. Lindsay, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Hey, Cal, good to be here.
So, Lindsay, what is GM saying about this decision?
They put out a statement yesterday that said the reductions in the shifts are temporary adjustments to production to align to market dynamics. It's something that they noted in the statement that they'll do as part of a process periodically as, production and inventory are trying to balance, and noted that it is going to be temporary. As you said, they'll be back in early October 6th. And so, I think what that signals really is, they're really trying to make sure that they're not overproducing those 2 models right now.
And what does this move say to you about demand for GM's EVs?
I think what they're being cognizant of, I think what this suggests is that, they don't need that full production right now, that they, reducing those 2 nameplates, it's a way to, kind of keep inventory in line with where customer demand is. They've sold, through the first half of the year, a few thousand of them. I think about 3,800 almost of the Escalade IQ, close to 8,000 of the Hummer EV through June. And they're kind of big models. The Hummer EV is in pickup and SUV form. The Escalade IQ is a full-size SUV, even bigger than the gasoline Escalade. And so they're the Escalade IQ in particular is actually a new model. And so we're beginning to see what sales are going to look like this year. I think industry-wide EV demand has sort of slowed from what early expectations were. GM's not unique to that at all. And I think like others, kind of looking at what inventory looks like, what production looks like, and how they keep the 2 balanced. So, we'll be watching really in the third quarter what EV demand looks like and whether it gets pulled forward some before the end of the federal tax credit for purchases and leases of new EVs, which is set to go away at the end of September. And we'll get a sense of what that looks like, heading into the end of the year. But at least for right now, pulling back a shift for about a month on those two nameplates, I think is just an effort to really keep production in line so that there's not, too much supply and then having to, to discount and really try to move those that way.
Perfect. Lindsay, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Cal.
Coming up, Automotive News has a special F&I section in our upcoming print edition. Two reporters who contributed stories join us next to talk about some of the biggest issues affecting lenders and dealers. That's next on Daily Drive.
Daily Drive listeners like you have access to the lowest price for Automotive News Congress 2025 on September 11th.
The event is where the industry's biggest players tackle its toughest challenges. Congress attendees don't just follow the industry, they lead it.
This year's featured speakers include Hyundai Motor Group Executive Chair Yu-Sung Chung, Asbury Automotive CEO David Holt, and General Motors CEO Mary Barra.
We are investing in America. We're creating jobs. That's creating IP in this country. And I think, the United States needs to lead in key technologies.
Join us to gain the insights and connections needed to steer your business through massive change.
To get the lowest price for the event, go to autonews.com/events, select Auto News Congress, and type in the discount code DailyDrive. That's one word, all caps, Daily Drive. And we'll see you on September 11th in Detroit.
Your dealership has no shortage of customer information. But when that data is conflicting, messy, and spread across a multitude of platforms, it's impossible to activate properly. As the automotive industry's first unified intelligence engine, Curator enriches and unifies your customer data across platforms, like your CRM, your DMS, your website, and even your marketing efforts. It then injects that information back into your most vital systems to provide a single view of each customer and equip your sales team with the information they need to close a deal. When one of the largest volume Subaru dealers in the country wanted to tap into its data goldmine, they turned to Curator. In just 4 months, Huberger Subaru experienced a 55% higher closing ratio and a return of 15 times their investment. Want to see it for yourself? Check out the case study at goobagoo.com/curator. That's GUBAGOO.com/curator.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Some of the biggest issues affecting dealership finance and insurance offices are part of the coverage of this week's Automotive News F&I special section. Staff writers Paige Hodder and John Hutter spoke with Automotive News senior retail editor Dan Shine about a few stories that are part of this week's section.
I'd like to welcome back John and Paige to the F&I Friday edition of Daily Drive.
Great to be here.
Thanks for having us.
You both did yeoman's work on a F&I special section that will be in the September 1st Automotive News print issue, but also online right now on autonews.com. I want to talk about a couple of stories that you each wrote for that. John, I'll start with you. We did an AN 100 anniversary story about wet signatures and how in this modern day of technology that we're still requiring a lot of people to write in blood or in blue or black ink their signature to buy a car. Tell us a little bit about why that still exists.
Yeah, it's funny because, e-signatures have been legal since, the year 2000 or earlier potentially. But there was the Federal E-Sign Act. But what we're finding is, you can't really do a car deal without, a wet ink signature, a wet signature. And where the bottleneck, as far as I can tell anyway, from my reporting, seems to be with the state DMVs, Departments of Motor Vehicles. They're just not willing to accept them. Now, some of them they might let you scan a form, that somebody signed, but at the end of the day, somebody still has to physically sign it, which means, if you're like, for example, I bought a truck earlier this year and it was from a dealer in another state, and we handled everything electronically, except they had to FedEx me documents, I think, for probably the Michigan State DMV. So anyway, so that's where the issue's been. It seems to be just some confusion on the DMV's part over what's NHTSA is requiring of them, but it sounds like they're starting to clear that up. So
there is hope down the road. I am shocked that the DMVs are doing anything that's not efficient and quick. But, just one of these archaic rules that, for some reason, I don't know.
And it was funny, even the NHTSA had even told 2 state DMVs in like 2002 or something like that it was fine. I was talking to guys at Carvana because, they do a lot of digital retail and, they run into this issue. And yeah, I guess the word just never got out that,
Yeah. Paige, you wrote an interesting article about 4 automakers that are asking the FDIC to allow them to charter an industrial loan company, aka a bank. It sounds different. What is an industrial loan company, and who are these automakers?
So an industrial loan company is essentially a bank, except for it's chartered by a business instead of a bank holding company. So 4 automakers, Ford, GM, Nissan, and Stellantis, want to create these. A couple already have them, but they want to use it in a similar way that automakers use captives. The main difference is an industrial loan company has federally insured deposits. So you can raise funds for lower rates and then, offer them to your customers at lower rates than a captive whose, deposits or money is not insured federally. So then, there's different ways that they go about that. So it's been kind of slow on the ILC front the past couple of years. Not, lots of industries have applications out to create one. It's not an automotive specific thing, but the FDIC has been kind of picky about approving applications over the past couple of years. They've approved 2 in the past 5 years.
How do I get a job like that?
There's a lot of question marks on whether these applications will move forward. GM actually withdrew its application last year because they'd been having some trouble and then reapplied later. So it's not a guaranteed thing, but, it's certainly a possibility, and it would change the game and how these automakers are able to specifically offer funds to dealers for commercial financing.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting that it's just kind of really no set procedure or process, and we'll let you know in the next 30 days or the next 30 months. It's like the next 30 years, you might hear something from them.
As far as I can tell, there's a lot of back and forth. I mean, they'll offer you feedback on the application. Sometimes they might say, we don't think this application is going to get passed, and then you can withdraw it. But it's a process that can take years. I mean, the applications can just be pending. I'm sure there's stuff going on behind the scenes, but it's kind of an opaque process. And, the requirements to get one approved are not, there's guidance, but it's not it's pretty dense, complicated stuff. And, it also depends on what the FDIC is thinking at the time and, what they're wanting to approve and what not and that kind of stuff.
Okay. John, you also wrote about the CARS rule in California. There was obviously this big push by the FTC to have a nationwide CARS rule that kind of got derailed by the Fifth Circuit Court. But California's kind of instituted their own. Tell us a little bit about that and why this may be a little bit different and more palatable to auto dealers.
Yeah, in California, it's the same acronym. It's the Combating Auto Retail Scams, but it's the Act, CARS Act instead of the CARS rule. And it's funny. When I started reporting this, I figured the car dealers would be opposed to it, but they said the California New Car Dealers Association, has reported they've had, good success working with the bill drafters to try to get the language into something that they can live with. At least they're not going to support it, but they're going to shift from being opposed to neutral, assuming a few more technical things. They've hammered out the important stuff they need done. They just need a few technical adjustments. But I think partly with this one, what is interesting is there's the CARS rule left it the FTC's version left, some things very vague. And so it kind of, you could read it where it was imposing this really clunky process on dealers. And I mean, there's still going to be new requirements on dealers, but it's kind of a one-off. You only have to, it's instances where, you're having written communications with the customer, you have to disclose the total price of the vehicle, but it's just once and it's in a written thing. They're not trying to make you keep records of all oral conversations you've had. So that's different. They've added this wasn't in the FTC's version, but they've added a 3-day return period that the California New Car Dealers Association President Brian Moss thinks is probably going to become a thing nationwide. He thinks other states might follow the lead. The way the dealers were able to make that one palatable was there's a price limit on what vehicles. It has to be a used car. Customers can return it within 3 days, but it's only for vehicles like $50,000 and below. So you can't just check out like a Lamborghini or a Ferrari and then, I didn't like it, I'm taking it back now. There's a restocking fee. There's a mileage limit and things like that. So again, I don't think they're crazy about the idea, but they've at least got it to a format where it's manageable and it's not prone to abuse,
right,
by consumers.
And finally, Paige, I want to talk a little bit about this ID verification story you wrote about. It has kind of an airport kind of check-in aspect to it.
Yeah, I mean, so if you've been to an airport, and in the US at least recently, you've probably experienced the face scan technology or seen it, where you walk up and you barely get a word out and then they're like, go, because they've already scanned your face and they know who you are. So pretty soon, car buyers in dealerships will have the opportunity to experience the same thing. Gather Technology, a ID verification vendor, is partnering with Clear, who does the back end ID verification, to bring this face scan technology to dealerships. So you've probably seen the Clear line at airports, but they also do other things. It turns out they verify Uber driver identities, and also if you're verified on LinkedIn, I'm verified on LinkedIn, they power that kind of stuff. They don't publish the number of people in the network, but I've been assured that it's pretty easy to sign up if you're not in it. And because I am verified on LinkedIn, I'm already in the network. So if I showed up at one of these dealerships, I would scan my face and put in my phone number, and it would know who I am. It would know my name. It would know my address. It would have my driver's license number. It would have my email. It would, anything that's already in the network.
Just to speed up that process.
It has. And then it can send that to the salesperson or whatever. It integrates into the system so that they don't have to get you to fill out a million forms, and so that they can do some checks on this, like they can see that Paige has car insurance and XYZ, so that we don't have to get that stuff out of the way, or so that it doesn't pop up early, and just really speed the process. So the moment that person sits down, we can start talking about what kind of fun new car do you want to buy, instead of who are you, and are you real, and are you trying to steal my car?
Right.
All that fun stuff. And so I wrote about that new collaboration as part of a story about just generally some of the new technologies coming out to verify people's identities in dealerships. We all know that fraud is really on the rise, and with AI and synthetic identities, it's becoming pretty technologically advanced. And so lots of companies are creating new tools for dealers to try and combat that in any way they can, and this face scan is one of those new ways.
So we go from the old of wet signatures to the latest technology. Yeah. So we've got it all covered in the latest issue of Automotive News. Thank you both for great work as usual, and for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own Lindsay Van Hully for her reporting for today's podcast. We also had reporting from Greg Layson of our sibling publication, Automotive News Canada. You can get the latest news on retail F&I, trade negotiations, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back over the weekend for our Weekend Drive edition of the show. Our own Molly Boygon and Michael Martinez talk about the week's biggest news stories and some of the reporting they've done for Automotive News' centennial, celebrating 100 years of covering the industry.
It was honestly pretty wild to see how Automotive Daily News at the time covered the UAW.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.